everybody. This is the Post Movie Podcast. I'm Steve Head.
And I'm John Black.
And in this episode, John and I are going to discuss the new Harry Potter film, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows.
Part one. Part 1.
Correct. Part 1. The new Russell Crowe thriller, The Next 3 Days. And, John, I didn't discuss this with you beforehand, but I think we're also going to go with Maiden Dagenham.
Okay.
The Sally Hawkins, Bob Hoskins thing, which is a fun film.
Yeah.
It's a fun film. I really enjoyed it. So it's, had we disliked it, it would not have made the podcast.
Yeah. It's one of those small independent films. But we are going to save time today to talk about the famous 2010 Moby Dick, right?
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I forgot. As I was putting together my notes here, I forgot that I watched that the other day.
How could you forget?
Yeah.
How could you forget this piece of cinematic genius?
I just was trying to explain to some friends the whole process of, why a movie like this gets made and what's, why it's interesting to watch.
Right.
And so I was going to show it to my brother Mike and a couple friends, and it was the last thing they wanted to see because they just assumed it was a bad movie. But knowing it's a bad movie, and the fact that it was created, in such with the intentions of being just absurd, is what makes it, as we've said many times, entertaining. So
yeah.
What I've also, I'll just say a few things about it really quickly, and then we'll get to Harry Potter. But what I've found so fun about these asylum releases is that they, yes, they're completely absurd, but they do have these moments of like, wow, that effect actually did work. I mean, they're just so cheaply made. I wouldn't even know. There's just so many examples I could come up with like, how do you cheaply shoot a submarine set? How do you make it look like this? The submarine is like 10 feet over this boat, How do you make like the cheapest looking props, when Barry Bostwick is racing out there to kill the whale with this like 15
super soaker
harpoon gun that it says in the making of that he and his wife made in his garage that week.
I'm all for that.
Set, and the director's like, I love it when actors get involved with making props.
And you gotta love the part where the giant humpback whale is 500 feet long or whatever, jumps out of the water and swallows a helicopter.
Yeah, that was great.
Awesome. But let's now people are going I thought they were going to talk about Harry Potter. So let's do the real movies first, and then we'll spend hours talking about Moby Dick, I'm sure.
Yeah. So quickly, this stars Barry Bostwick and Renee O'Connor from Xena, who I've always enjoyed. So it's got some real kitsch factor, as pretty much every asylum release does. But
so stay tuned, listeners. We will get to it. We will be raving about it. Yes. But let's do the professional stuff first.
The Harry Potter stuff, man. It's like there's so much Harry Potter stuff. It's like I feel like as much as I know about Harry Potter, I still feel unqualified considering the depth to which people go in analyzing and talking about all the nuances of these films.
I don't understand.
I'm no, expert on Harry Potter, but I do know these movies.
But the thing is, I was wondering, and when I wrote my review, I was thinking this too: is that if you're not, I can't imagine someone who isn't already immersed in the culture of Harry Potter. But if this is the first one you've seen, are you going to understand what the heck's going on?
No.
No way. There's no way.
It doesn't stand as a movie on its own. And I think some fans they've said that this is like The Empire Strikes Back, and I completely disagree. This is not like The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, maybe The Empire Strikes Back doesn't so much stand on its own, but this movie just does not stand on its own. In fact, it drags a lot during the middle of the film, and I felt that this kind of had some Twilight. They're like moping around the woods, and there's relationships issues going on, and it was just it has a boring spot.
Well, that's it's funny you mentioned the Twilight thing, because I was wondering, along with the fact that if you go into this without any history of the Harry Potter movies, you're going to be lost, but also that if you can step back from that history and watch, Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint and Emma Watson don't really give good performances. They're characters now. They're not acting. They show up. Oh, yeah, that's Harry Potter. That's Ron. That's Hermione. There's no, a lot of what Harry Potter does.
Over the years, they have.
Well, I think so, but there's so much history and I guess luggage with it that when all Harry needs to do is stand there, stare, and we know he's brooding about.
Yeah, there's a lot of emoting here.
Yeah.
On this part.
I was like, come on, do something.
I think Hermione is probably the most lively and active of the characters, and I think she gives the overall best acting performance. Harry, like the Luke Skywalker character here, he's just sort of, in the back. What I mean is he's just like moaning and moping and just vexed the whole time. And he doesn't seem to have this character like freedom like Ron does, like Rupert Grint does,
Right.
Maybe it's because Ron is like the humorous element here, but Harry is just kind of blah. Again,
it's kind of a one-note. It's a one-note thing, And the thing that if you can again separate yourself is he's surrounded by the cream of the crop of British cinema today, and all the adults. I think even if they're just little spot, little appearances, all the adults to me are fascinating. I mean, Bill Nye comes in as the head of the school.
The Potter films are.
Yeah.
But, the kids have gotten better.
Great.
I mean,
go ahead.
The way.
They've had to decade.
They've had to do it. They've had the time. The way Chris Columbus used to direct them was that there was so much on-screen direction that they had so much ADR in the first couple of films because he'd be telling them what to do while they were filming it. And as they've gotten along, they've gotten better at it. Being able to. Daniel Radcliffe had said that they've become actually, believe it or not, more comfortable on the set,
right.
and in the way they interact with each other, and being able to react better as actors, which I've always thought they were terrific in a way. But they have in a way grown as actors. But okay, taking that history of how they've grown as actors, totally out of the conversation here, because what matters is how the film stands by itself, and I thought it was really cool, but I'm not completely sold on it. It
exactly.
It dragged. I mean, I would go see it again. Don't get me wrong. I love it and everything, but it's no Empire Strikes Back, and it's very mopey, but sure is beautiful, and it sure does have some cool sequences. But you do need a lot of backstory. There's a lot of exposition that's required here, and apparently there's tons more obviously in the book that they had to get. There was just so much exposition they had to get rid of, but I can't say it's
the thing is
I mean I really enjoyed it, but these comparisons to other great films, I don't know.
I enjoyed it the way I enjoy like I don't know, a cookie. I enjoyed it while I was eating it, and then I don't think about it again. I'm not going to go back and have. It was empty calories to me, cinematic empty calories, because I liked watching it. But as soon as I walked out, I didn't really want to talk about it. I didn't really think about it that much. I was like, what's next? Because, okay, I've got to wait 8 months. And I remember, Mike Morano, one of our fellow critics, just pacing back and forth right outside the theater door in his own little world, saying, my God, they actually made the movie better than the book. How could they do that? And he was talking about how much he liked the movie more than the book. And I was like, I haven't finished the book.
I think this movie really does, and I think many of the Potter films are made so much for the lovers of the books, because this is a literary based thing. But from my perspective, someone who hasn't read the books, if I hadn't seen any of the prior movies, if I had missed a couple, there's a lot that's missing here. You really have to know these characters. In order to get it, you really have to see the prior films, and I think that just doesn't make for a film that is supposed to or should stand on its own. It doesn't accomplish standing on its own.
Exactly.
But it's a great piece to the overall, epicness of this series of films.
And not to compare it with the Twilight franchise, but I think those movies have gotten better. And because I know the first one had to be slavish to the book, and then they stand more alone for me as movies as they progress than this does. Again, there's just, you need your crib notes, or you need to sit next to someone who's already dressed as a...
there is a lot there. A lot to know. I mean, I watched the film with my brother Mike, who was sitting to my left, and a number of times during the film, I asked him as quietly as I could, because, you know, I mean, I'm talking during movies, like what the background is on some of these characters. And without Mike filling me in on a couple of things, I, as someone who knows the movies, still wouldn't have been aware as to, you know, what's going on here. Like, for example, we've got Luna Lovegood coming back in sort of a, you know, and her father coming back into, or being introduced as a pivotal character here. And I don't know what's going on here. You know, Luna's the backstory, her, you know, how her father's involved with it, and then Mike goes in to tell me all these things about how you know, purebloods are now running Hogwarts, and half-bloods, just, you know, mudbloods can't be, you know, they're getting rid of sympathizers, and, you know, there's all this backstory stuff that actually made it much more interesting to me, but that came from talking with, you know, Mike and other friends, not the movie.
Yeah, it's not in the movie. Right. And again, that's, I think we will hear from fans because we've taken this stand, but it's true. I mean, you got to just look at it as, you know, a movie standing on its own, and it doesn't really, it takes so much for granted from, you know, that you already know all this, or that you already, you know, you understand what a Horcrux is and why they have to be destroyed, and you know all these things. And I'm like, no, not really.
You know, I really, coming from the same perspective as you, I really didn't get that.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some exposition that had to be introduced about the, you know, the Horcrux, however you pronounce them, and what would happen there, and I didn't know. It's like sometimes I just felt like stuff was being invented as we went along. You know, like new missions to, you know, take on, or things to run from, and you know, characters appear and disappear, people are married and connected, and, you know, interrelationship things, and it all happens just so mashed together that the backstory is very valuable, but it, you know, even in the first part of this film, I feel like there's just not enough room for it. Or, you know, intentionally, I think David Yates has to do this. He has to eliminate all the story stuff in order to keep the movie going. And for the most part, it really does work well. For instance, I loved Helena Bonham Carter's performance in the film. I loved the how they used Dobby here, and I loved the you know, certainly the opening scenes with how the
big chase scenes,
Voldemort and his crew took away. Yeah. There's some great stuff here, and it's fun.
But again, it's after all those bells and whistles, you get ground down by story, which is just something. Again, it's not written in a way to help the first-time viewer or the casual viewer like me understand it. I've been trying to work my way through the book, and I'm like, I just don't. Yeah.
I'm going to try to do it too. I'm intrigued, very much so. You know, and I don't want to cast this movie off like it's, you know, it's not anything. I mean, it's an experience, and it's fun. And
yeah, it was entertaining, but like I said, as soon as it was over, I just filed it away. I was like, I know I got to remember stuff to review it, but it didn't stick with me. I didn't have the urge to like either catch up on the old films or go see this again or even read anything about it or anything. I wrote my review and I filed it, and that's it. Well, it's over.
Well, you know, from an artistic standpoint, I enjoyed the film. I liked the animation sequence. They had these sort of Victorian or Chinese shadow puppets that told the backstory of how we get to this wand that is like the most powerful of all wands. And somehow,
right, the whole what are the Deathly Hallows?
Yeah, so somehow it falls into Dumbledore's possession, and they tell this sort of parable through animation, and I thought that was really cool.
Yep.
Just like I said before, I want to focus on the middle part of this film where the kids go into the
giant, the world's biggest tent.
The world's biggest what?
The world's biggest tent. You know, a tent that
looks like
a little army pup tent, but when you go inside,
tent.
it's you know 10 rooms and servants and chandeliers and.
Or it's like the Mary Poppins bag, just all kinds of things in the tent. You know, apparently this was like really long in the book. It was like a really long scene, but this. And they had been on the run for like 6 or 9 months like that, and but this just idea. Yeah, it's too long in the movie. I mean, it's moody and dark, and you get into these relationship things, which I'm sure is great for the Twilight loving people out there, and then we get this one scene where Ron is tempted with, you know, his worst fear image of involving Harry and Hermione, which is
in the animated
which is
buff,
sort of spawning many of the questions that the journalists were asking at the press junket. But beyond that, I guess it was important, but it's a real drag. It's a real drag there.
Now, do you think over the course of movies, or just this movie, how kid-friendly do you think this is?
Wow, it's become less kid-friendly because they do really do away with somebody towards the beginning of the film, and it's pretty vicious. It's pretty vicious.
Just
and
I
thought that who's Alan Rickman's character again?
Snape's.
Yeah, I thought there would be some redeeming quality to Snape, like something, or even some redeeming quality to who's the Slytherin kid? I forget his name.
Draco Malfoy.
You see, I can just whip these Potter names right off the top of my head.
I'm surprised they're in mine.
I thought there would be some emotional conflict going on there, but they maybe they're just too tempted by power.
Well,
and just had really bad upbringing.
This is only
maybe
part
Harry
one.
thought there was something to there.
And this is only part one too, because I have Snape's always been my favorite. I think it's because it's Alan Rickman, and I like him as an actor. And I was like, how come he's turning out to such a jerk? And my friend Regina was like, I was like, okay, do I have to wait until summertime?
We'll see what happens here. I hope that's not a spoiler.
Oh,
John, did you just spoil the one before me?
Did I what?
Did you just spoil part 2?
Yes, I did. But then, I didn't tell you about the Ron nude scenes in part 2. So what? Harry and Hermione had theirs.
This is the maturing direction of the Potter films.
Yep.
And here I wanted to talk about Harry Potter in 3D, and it ends up being
3D.
Naked Snape.
It's even this one. I wouldn't want to see this on IMAX. I just think the action would be too frantic on that bigger screen, and the slow parts would be too slow on a giant screen. So why do I want to see it in 3D?
They considered converting it. Warner Brothers wanted to do the film in 3D, and the producers had, they were trying to find somebody that could make a really quality 3D conversion to it. But it turns out that there just aren't that many people in Hollywood that have any considerable experience in, up converting 2D to 3D. And the other versions were sort of, like Clash of the Titans, not so great.
Right.
Alice in Wonderland, not so great. So they didn't want to do that, and some scenes worked well in 3D. Others didn't.
Right.
I think as far as the interview I listened to with David Yates, or was it the producers? I forget. Anyway, they did say that part 3 is going to be an upconvert into 3D, although it was all filmed, in
2D,
fundamentally in 2D.
Right.
But if it looks good, it looks good. And
well, that's
it, so they can charge the extra ticket price.
They'll have to make it brighter because it's a very dark movie, and if you put glasses on top of that.
John, I should add that, yes, it's dark, but it was extra dark for our screening because we saw a digital print, but Boston Common screwed it up again. They had a 3D lens on that particular camera that was projecting the film for us.
Really?
We saw it digitally, but they projected it through the 3D lens, which actually darkened it a bit for us.
Huh.
So the movie is actually brighter. It's a little bit more vibrant than what we saw. So
that'd be good.
Thank you, Boston Common.
How did you find that out?
Had a long talk with Brett about it afterwards.
And
there'd been a couple times where I'd noticed something wrong with it, and I'd seen how Boston Common switches out the lenses, the film lenses, and this was dark. It was a little dark, and Brett was kind of upset with it afterwards. And
Brett?
Yeah.
Upset about the film, about the screening?
He's like, again, they've done it again. They don't even know, or they don't even care. It's like I further looked into it because a buddy of mine, Andrew, is the projectionist over at the Somerville Theater, and he takes great care and with every element of putting the film on the screen. But he says the thing with Boston Common is they actually have the management working the projectors there.
Really?
And it's not the same thing. It just doesn't work. They don't get it.
Right. They're not professional projectionist, and I think a lot of
I think you have to be in the union there to touch the cameras there, or maybe they're not employing anybody in the union and they're just using the managers to do the projection. But time and time again, we're screened movies, at that theater, and they're not up to where they should be in terms of the viewing experience we should be having. So it's kind of a bummer. So on that note,
yeah. Anyway, I think we both agree that it's worth seeing.
Yes.
You seem to have enjoyed it, not more than me, but you enjoyed it enough to want to go back a second time.
I'll see. I love the whole mythos of it, and this was an interesting film in that it really didn't have anything to do with Hogwarts, which was different.
Yeah. They're finally out of school, or out of the school environment.
Out of the school environment and into London. That's cool. I mean, I'll see it again, definitely. And I'll have learned quite a bit more about it. It's just one of those things that I like to study up on and, find out how they did this shot and that shot and all that kind of stuff. And I really like that animation scene with the silhouetted puppets. I thought that was really neat.
Are you going to go in costume?
Oh, my God.
Time?
We should say something about the Quidditch team that showed up at the theater.
No, I shouldn't. They don't deserve any...
Made a good point here, and because as we were waiting for the film, they had Emerson College, which is right next to the theater, had an Emerson Quidditch team that showed up to the screening with all their brooms and their jerseys and stuff, and I think they had all the brooms stacked in a seat. So
someone didn't get to see it.
Actually, someone was denied being able to see the advanced screening because of all the Quidditch brooms.
Well,
these were like 20-something kids. 20-something football player type guys walking around with a broomstick between their legs and the little, the frilly hay things sticking out of their butts. And they're waddling around on broomsticks into the theater. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not...
We used to get high...
It's different than dressing up for Star Wars or anything like that. It just looked goofy.
We used to get high and go to horror movies. Now kids are, stone cold sober and going to Harry Potter dressed as a Quidditch team. Times change. But, I went to...
somebody said to me, think about it, Steve. These kids were 10 when the movie came out, or 12. They were kids, and, it's 10 years
They're the
later.
same age as Hermione and, Harry Potter and Ron. They're the same age as those actors. They were 11 when they started.
They're running around with Quidditch sticks between their legs.
Yeah. Well, I went to the Fenway Theater Wednesday night to see...
It just looks a lot stranger. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
I went to... Fenway Wednesday night to see Tangled. And when I came out, the Fenway Theater, from the doors at the sidewalk all the way past the end where the Best Buy is, so that whole length of buildings was people waiting in line to go see the midnight show. And I got out at like 8:30 at night, and they're waiting in line, and I'd say half of them were dressed in some kind of wardrobe. I was like, good for you kids, you could be doing worse.
It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
And I am totally and completely guilty of it. I dressed up to see Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, when that came out.
Man, you always bring that up.
Well, I mean, come on. It's a different time, a different mindset. And as much as I love Star Wars, and I'm talking about Star Wars again, and hell, man, if I had a Stormtrooper outfit, I'd probably wear it to the theater too, but I didn't have one. And that was a different time back in 1999. I'm not as... George Lucas has successfully made me less enthusiastic about Star Wars.
Okay, that was quite well put. Quite well put.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the Russell Crowe flick.
Next is The Next 3 Days.
Yes.
Directed by Paul Haggis, and it's about Russell Crowe being an American, typical everyday American college teacher trying to break his wife out of prison.
Yeah. That's what typical American college professors do when their wives are suddenly accused of murder. Bludgeoning her boss with a fire extinguisher. This movie I thought was kind of a mess.
I thought it was a mess for the first half, but it picked up, and I liked where it was going, because having known nothing about this movie, I thought it was going to be something like Conviction, where you are trying to get where the protagonist, Crowe in this case, who has one son, and his wife is just really kind of like, for no reason, it seemed like, like out of the blue, taken, arrested,
right,
and for murder, and I thought he was going to be doing whatever he could just to get her out. And I think there's this point for me in the movie which it turned and became really interesting because it became about not getting her out, not proving her innocence, but just about the escape. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was cool.
You know,
I think it's a good movie. It's not a great movie. It's going to be quickly forgotten, but its objective was different for me. Just getting her out and being able to set up that whole escape is cool. You know, I like seeing how things work.
We should have traded off because I liked the first part of the movie and didn't. I thought by the time they start, you know, I like the first part because he's you know, Crow's playing the every guy. He's really bad at what he's doing. He can't figure out the court system to save his life. He can barely take care of his kid. He's coming up with these plans from the internet on how to like pick locks, and he goes, you know, to buy passports from drug dealers and gets the shit kicked out of him. That part of it I like. Right. But when he actually starts the caper to get his wife out of prison,
he becomes hard to lay. He starts to become cold-blooded.
No, it wasn't that. He suddenly becomes very good at all this. He's shooting people. He's running. He's he's outwitting the cops and everything. And suddenly he's a superhero. I was like, I don't buy this.
But Elizabeth Banks is so good-looking. Would you not step up to the plate and do that too?
No comment. Of course I would. But the thing, you know, and I think they did a real good. You know, he does a good job of being the guy in love to the point where he'll do something like this. You know, they bring in some other like hot mom he meets at the playground, and I was like, please don't start an affair. You got to get your wife, and he doesn't. You know, he just uses her as another step in his plan. But the plan goes off so action film. You know, it becomes an action film that I was like, this doesn't.
It becomes more of an action film, and I appreciated that. I liked that, and you know, there was some filmmaker sleight of hand, you know, in manipulating the time here to create this, you know, the drama, which is sort of set by the clock. He's almost got only so much time to be, you know, these 3 days to break her out and get everybody where they need to be, and there's some problems that come up along the way. You know, as far as like being able to get out of the country with their son, you know, is one thing, but whether or not it works, I don't know. I enjoyed it because I couldn't see where this was going to go for a while. You know, it became very intriguing to me. But I also think I'm not sold on the idea of Russell Crowe, at least at this point in his career, being able to play a normal guy. And this was something that Ty Bird said, that the idea of him doing this, we're not sold as an audience, and I agree with that. I don't see Russell Crowe. I still see him as a larger than life movie star, not as Joe Average from Pittsburgh.
See, it worked for me. I always was aware it was Russell Crowe, but I thought his acting was solid. He didn't until again he became the action hero at the end. Then I was like, this is bullshit. It doesn't make any sense that this guy can suddenly.
In the end. Okay, whatever.
No, he's suddenly he's a super agent. He's a hero. He's the action guy, and it just he couldn't even unlock a door right.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's just this or nothing. So everything's on the line. That's why he wouldn't care if he got shot.
All right, I understand that part, but I never felt that tension in any of the action scenes. That he was a desperate man trying to do things. He suddenly became very cool and very good at finding the way out, and he had all these it's just I wanted him to be the guy, and there's a scene where he comes up with a way to make a skeleton key for the doors in the prison, and when he tries it, he almost gets caught, and he's so upset about it, he runs outside and throws up. Okay, I want that guy doing the caper at the end. I don't want Russell Crowe, action hero, doing the caper at the end. I want the nervous, scared guy doing it. I never saw that. Yeah. Even when his wife, because they
You're right. Okay, I'll grant you that. There was his character. There was a character arc that wasn't plausible for you, I think.
Right. It was just that it suddenly once the clock starts running and he's only got so many minutes to do the crime, it becomes an action film. It takes all characters wiped out. It's just an action film. And I was enjoying the characters up till then, And I think, and Haggis does this little trick. There's some stunt casting in this of having Liam Neeson be an ex-con who Russell Crowe goes meets in a bar, and Brian Dennehy is his dad, who mumbles like 4 words in the whole movie, and RZA plays the one of the drug dealers, and they're all good actors, but to have them do these little parts is pulling me out of the story. I'm buying Russell Crowe as the average guy here. He doesn't just go to Liam Neeson for help. You know, he doesn't suddenly have Brian Dennehy as his dad, and Brian Dennehy doesn't say anything. You know, and when I see RZA as a drug dealer, I'm always like, hey, that's RZA. I don't think it's some guy in the street. It could have been anyone playing the dad. It could have been anyone playing the con. Mm-hmm. You know, to have these stunt casts come in, and it's nothing against their performances per se, but it pulls me out if I'm already having to wrap my head around Russell Crowe being the everyman. Don't give me Liam Neeson as the guy he finds to help him for 5 minutes in the movie. Mm-hmm. You know, just have some tough-looking, no-name actor who I won't think of when I'm watching. You know, I won't be pulled out by saying, "Oh, it's Liam Neeson. What's he going to do?"
Yeah,
as it turns out, not much.
You're getting bounced out of your, belief zone here.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. Same with I grew up watching Brian Dennehy. You know, I want him to do something, and
yeah, he carried some weight with me too. You know, as soon as you see him on the screen, you know there's going to be there had to be something maybe a little more substantial later. Right.
And when it is, it's kind of like, anyone could have done that. Why are you hiring Brian Dennehy? Why are you hiring Liam Neeson if you're only going to give him 5 minutes in the movie, and it's going to blow the credibility I've built up till then?
Well, you know, I thought it was terrifically well written. I mean, the characters just were really, to me, well rounded. And of course, that's Paul Haggis. You know, he's a terrific writer, and I think this is only his second feature as a director. In the Valley of Elijah was his prior film, and I don't think I've seen that. I don't recall it. I thought this was it was better than I thought it would be. Mm-hmm. And I say that about many films, but I really went into this one just writing it off and thinking that it wasn't going to work. But there's that cat and mouse chase that you did not like towards the end. I enjoyed. Just the whole nuances of the nuance thing about how he had to set up all of these little things so that that he could make this escape work. Right. Right. And I'm not saying, I don't want to say if it does or it doesn't, but there was a lot of planning that he put into this. Mm-hmm. So I guess he was able to use his abilities honed by years and years as a college professor.
Right. I'll outweight the cops because I've taught Don Quixote at junior college.
Would you pay $10 for it?
No, I'd DVD it.
This is a DVD release too. It's going to be forgotten. It's coming out opposite Harry Potter, so that's kind of like a this is it's a very alternate choice, and it's going to get just smashed.
What is that?
Steamrolled.
Counter programming? It's not going to work.
Right. Or imagine this headline: the next 3 days tops Harry Potter. I mean, in the alternate universe,
it won't make as much as Harry Potter made at the midnight screenings on Thursday. That's already 24 million, something like that.
Right.
So no, but it was interesting.
Terrific performance by Elizabeth Banks. I really was impressed with her. I see her as a comedian, and for me, this was a change. This was some really good stuff. She says some mean stuff to him. Mm-hmm. There's that scene where they have a couple of meetings in the prison where she's asking her to get real and take a look at the evidence. Yeah. And then, she's just giving up, and that was mean. I dig it.
She's good, and I always thought of her as a comedian too until I saw her play Barbara Bush in W, and I was like, wow, she's got chops.
Yeah,
she's not just a hot comic.
Yeah. Always to me remembered for Wet Hot American Summer. Do I have barbecue sauce on my face? Mm-hmm. Pittsfield, Mass.
All right.
Elizabeth Banks. Okay, let's move on. So let's do a quick countdown before we go into Maiden Dagenham.
Okay.
So I can get this right. Okay. If you can put your thing up to the phone.
I hope you mean microphone.
All
right. Yeah. Good thing this isn't a video conference, or I would have just had a wonderful sight gag.
That would be
all right. I'm taking off the.
Say when.
When. 3, 2, 1. Start.
Maiden Dagenham.
Yes.
I was looking forward to this. I really was.
And did it meet your expectations?
It did. It did. I'd first heard about it on a podcast, a podcast from The Guardian in England. And they detailed Sony's concerns about marketing the movie in the United States, and one of them is that the movie was originally titled "We Want Sex," and they figured that somehow that was going to be limiting, and they changed the title to, of course, Made in Dagenham. But "We Want Sex" was actually, it's a moment in the movie that's referenced, and it's a moment that happened, I guess, in real life, where the women were protesting and they had wanted sexual equality, but the banner in the photo only got so far as "We Want Sex." So, but it's a true story about what took place at the Ford manufacturing plant in Dagenham in the UK in 1968, where there was something around maybe less than 200 female workers, seamstresses, who do the car seats.
Right.
And they wanted to prove that what they were doing was actually skilled labor in making these seats look good. The embroidery and whatnot.
Right.
And they believe, they do make the case that they had proven that they were actually doing skilled labor, because the machine can't do what they're doing. Differentiate between colors and types and threads, and that's skilled labor, and they were getting a pittance to what the men were getting. And what started out as something small became a lot greater, because when they decided to go on strike, the backlog of materials that they had to insert into the cars evaporated, and eventually the plants just came to a stop, and Ford was, their backs were against the wall, and they had to talk to him. So, but that's the real story. In this version, you get the very cute
Sally Hawkins,
very watchable Sally Hawkins, who's terrific, and also is Bob Hoskins, who plays her boss.
Cute and lovable in his own way.
Yes. Yes.
Again,
it makes it very palatable.
But here was my problem. It took me 20 minutes of the movie to get used to what they were saying, because they speak in the thickest accents. I didn't catch on to the rhythm, and they're talking really fast, and I was like, I'm catching enough words to follow the plot, but I'm getting nothing, because they're all talking working class 1968 British slang, and it took a while for me to get to it, and it was enough to, but because it's Hoskins and Hawkins, I can follow it, and I'm learning. The momentum kept me going, so I did enjoy it.
Did you need subtitles, Sean?
Not as much as I do in some movies.
What was that movie we saw last year, where it was the Irish film with James, what's his name, where they actually showed it? 100 Dead Men Walking.
Yes.
Where they actually showed it with subtitles.
Well, there's some Is it Mike Lee? There's some Mike Lee movies that are shown with subtitles. My name is.
I don't recall.
My name is Joe. And they speak in such thick Scottish accents that you need the subtitles. I didn't need them, but it would have helped eventually, I think. Or at least in the beginning.
Yeah, I can see that, but
like I said, the story is well written enough, and the characters are strong enough that I eventually, I caught on to it. So
yeah, it's an appealing film. I mean, yes, it's a workers' uprising movie, and we've seen these. They come around every now and then, Norma Ray and Silkwood, I think, and those are the only two I can recall at the moment. But so it's predictable,
Yeah.
But it's sort of like candy. Sally Hawkins, who I loved in Happy Go Lucky, makes this movie very sweet. And the production design is very pleasing, and the whole '60s aura is neat. And I really liked the Ford factory scenes, the way they were able to actually combine the actual footage of the factory scenes with the set designs and whatnot. And it was very pleasing to watch. My only problem, I think, is in that since they're doing a movie like this, it's not just about equality in terms of pay and workers' rights and whatnot. But also, I'm sensitive to like making people villains who shouldn't be villains. Like if this was going to be like an anti-man thing, or this was going to be like an anti-America thing, and considering how much Ford is discussed and how much the company is shown in the film, with their logos and whatnot. I guess one could assume that they put a stamp of approval on it because it did sort of change things for the company in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was sensitive to like, this is going to. There were some scenes in the movie where Sally Hawkins, she plays Rita O'Grady, and she, just going to work, and meeting some of the other people that are now having problems because of what she's done. She had this, there was some really hurtful moments. I mean, I don't think she was trying to hurt any of the other men. She wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't like this is against men. She has a sort of a rupture in a really good relationship that she has with her husband, and saying that like when you guys went on strike, we supported you, and why should it be any different in this case? And she has a point there, but I guess my red spot being like, if they were going to make this anti-male, then it wouldn't work for me because they were just trying to vilify men. But it worked. It worked.
Yeah.
Ford doesn't come off as they do come off as the villains in this case, but all the down the line, not ultimately. It's a capitalism thing. They're trying to save money and they're doing whatever by whatever means necessary. And if in this case it came to suppressing a certain portion of the workforce. And
there's a nice little thing at the end where they, the guy explains that, there's a little, a written part at the end saying, Ford's going on to do much better things. Now they're considered one of the best companies to work for in the world. I was like, okay, so that's how you got away with it.
There's a concession at the end. The other thing is that this is similar in the sense to, again, I'm referencing Conviction, is when they show photos of the people who really were responsible for the story, you just so much more realize, wow, they're just so not as good looking as the people in this movie.
Yeah.
The reality just doesn't have the palatableness of the characters we're seeing on the screen.
That happens.
But, it happens. It's a beautiful film. The production design, the wardrobe, it's fun. It's surprising to me that I would be saying that a workers' revolt movie is fun, but there are some amusing moments to it.
Oh, yeah.
One of the girls wanting to be a model is actually co-opted into doing a photo shoot for Ford,
mm-hmm.
and I think it's one of the better scenes in the movie. At least it pays off as being a good scene.
Yeah, and again, not to go on and on about the woman, but Sally Hawkins is not only extremely cute to look at, but she's a good actress, and you really believe. You're rooting for her from the start when she starts out as the person who is looks least likely to be the leader of this revolt, but she gets pushed in the corner and she fights back because she's a tiny little mousy little thing, and she gets pushed in the corner and fights back, and then you're like, yeah, you go, girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was fun.
Did you see Laird back in 2004?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
She plays I think she plays a hit woman in that, didn't she?
It's been a long time since I've seen it, so.
Yeah, I think that was my first. I think the first time I saw her, she was playing a bad guy character, and then she's.
She'll always be the girl from Happy Go Lucky.
Yeah, to me,
that was such a perfect movie to me. It was. I don't think she'll ever top that. So.
It'd be hard to top.
Yeah.
My space. That's her space.
All right, so those are the three major releases. Now it's time to get on to good old-fashioned fun movie making. My favorite movie of the week.
Your favorite? Okay, go for it.
2010, Moby Dick, featuring Barry Bostwick as Ahab and Renee O'Connor as the hot whale scientist. It's from Asylum Pictures, and it's November now, and I've got to tell you, the one line of dialogue I will always remember from everything I've seen this year is at one point after they found this giant 500-foot whale is attacking, boats and eating helicopters and, about to destroy the world. And Renee O'Connor looks at Barry Bostwick and goes, "Why is he doing this?" And Barry Bostwick says, "Why do babies die in their sleep?" I put my hands up. I was like, touchdown! That is so awful, but it's so out there and funny. Why do babies die in their sleep? And then he just walks away. Or limps away on his, mechanical leg, which, of course he replaces with a giant cross at the end. Oh, my God. This was so much fun.
I think I've got a favorite line, though. When his crew, and in this case, the Pequod is a submarine. It's a modern nuclear submarine. And Barry Bostwick is, got a big slash down his face, and he's just maniacal about getting Moby Dick, and his crew questions it. And they're like, "Why do this?" And he says, "Do not talk to me of blasphemy. I'd strike the sun if it insulted me." Which makes so much sense. I mean,
it does.
In this movie, it makes sense because the line obviously so does not work. It's just something that was just,
but don't you
brought to the future from 100 years ago to be said now by Ahab, the submarine commander.
But don't you love the way Barry Bostwick delivers that line?
Yeah, and wasn't the crew thinking like, Jesus, our captain speaks in like classic Victorian.
I think the crew was thinking, I hope the check clears. Because it was...
Barry Bostwick, he had to be committed to here with the Asylum's prior titles.
Oh, how could they not? How could they not?
I mean, he's in the double feature, picture show vein here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it was the same with, the... O'Connor from the Xena shows. I haven't really seen her in a lot, but I think
Renee O'Connor.
Even in the making of extras and the bloopers that they're on here, they talk, I think, to the writer, and he makes a comment like, "Well, in case you didn't, this is a movie about a giant monster. Asylum makes a lot of those." I'm like, yeah, they do, do, and I like them. And that's. I'm sure you could sit here and watch it and say, a submarine really can't surface like that. A submarine doesn't breach like a whale, except in an Asylum movie, and then I'm like, breach away, dudes.
Yeah.
Go crazy.
They're taking it to the next level in their next one. You saw the preview, I'm sure, for Mega Shark.
Yes.
Mega Shark versus... I don't know, Sharkzilla versus...
Sharkzilla versus Crocosaurus.
Where this actual prehistoric shark bites through the center of the Golden Gate Bridge. That'll be something.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm so there.
Yeah, and I'm just knowing how cheaply these movies are made, or this movie is made. When I say these movies, I mean, Titanic 2 and... what was the other one? We talked about MILF and
Gacy House. No, that was awful. That was bad for this standard.
But the computer graphics in this were, not bad.
No,
for just a team of a couple dozen guys that work in Burbank on their computers. Not it's like. Yeah, they probably made a really cheap set look a little bit more expensive with, the computer graphics.
If you go back to any giant monster movie, going back to the 60s till now, there's a tradition, like you said, this is how you make a submarine set on $100. You only, you focus on the dials in front of the guy. You don't have to show the whole submarine, just the dials in front of the guy.
Yeah.
And there's only 4 guys. You only need 4 guys. You don't have to show the whole crew. You don't have to show everything. So there's this, and then when the monster comes out, it's like I love, Mothra and Gamera and all those other, Godzilla movies. That's a guy in a rubber suit destroying a model town. I don't care. I'm enjoying it. And, I could pick apart the fact that the whale never looks even close to real. But I don't want a realistic whale. I want this prehistoric Moby Dick.
It's just, and this is like it's like Jaws: The Revenge.
Yeah.
Moby Dick knows Ahab. In fact, the scene at the beginning, which I guess takes place in the late 60s, when Ahab loses his leg, this monolithic whale sticks its eye up to the side of the wreckage of the boat and sees Captain Ahab on the inside. So it's taking a mental note as to about this moment where he's going to take his leg. So the whale remembers. The whale knows. There's a personal connection between the whale and Ahab.
And that echoes through the whole thing.
This time, it is personal. It always has been.
How can you not love that? And again, I don't know if I'd want this to be in theaters. I wouldn't.
No, Asylum makes their money off of maybe off of international sales too, but it's a DVD thing.
Yeah, and if I had paid money to see this in the theater, it just wouldn't work the same. I want it to be. I want to watch it on DVD. This is why you have direct to DVD.
And there's this other scene in the movie where Renee O'Connor, she plays the Ishmael character. In this case, she's sort of the scientist who is the sort of the observer in this film. And the Barry Bostwick's crew somehow searches her out and finds her, as she's with her assistant in this boat in the middle of, I don't know, somewhere off the coast in L.A. And the submarine surfaces next to the boat, and they play the exterior of the submarine with just these two guys standing up on top of this black wall.
Yep.
So you never actually see the exterior of the submarine as it's like surfaced next to the boat, but they just have the camera pointing up to him and then the camera looking down on Renee O'Connor and the other guys. So it's just like the cheapest of sets made to look like this thing is like 15 feet higher than the boat.
Yep.
And so then they get into this scenario where, women aren't allowed on subs, but in this case, she's the expert here. So they Ahab lets her aboard to be able to, as his consultant, to be able to find this whale. Mm-hmm. So it's basically Renee O'Connor surrounded by the sub crew.
Right. Do you mind covering up? You mind covering up, man? We've been out of sea for 6 months.
Right, but there's nothing that takes this movie into the R range or anything like that. They've been underwater for 6 months, and now they have a woman on board.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I would search it out, people. I really would. You will not be if you think anything we said about it makes it sound at least worth a rental. Go see it.
Yeah, it's a beer and piece to It's a beer and piece of shit. No, it's a beer and pizza kind of movie.
Yeah.
But if I said it was a piece of shit, Asylum, that's why it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they don't, take it personally. They really know what they're doing. So, it's a kick in the pants.
Right.
And, for those that miss it, it's their loss. It's their loss. If you're going to have a certain expectation about this film, it's not going to be met. It's just. It must be appreciated for the absurdity that it is.
And we did. Obviously, we did. It got the most positive review of anything we talked about today.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it again. I may even, either tonight or tomorrow. I'll be watching 2010 Moby Dick, which I think they should not have called 2010 Moby Dick.
Well,
dates it immediately.
It's catchy though.
I'm really looking forward to this film they've got that they just finished. I check their website every now and then, the Asylum site, and I'm interested in this film they've got coming out in February called Battle of Los Angeles, which is
that's Asylum Films.
What?
That's Asylum Films.
No. It's it's in this undoubtedly in the similar vein as to the other big budget film that's coming out, or medium budget film, Battle: Los Angeles.
Battle:
So this is Battle of Los Angeles.
Okay.
And this is Battle of Los Angeles by the Asylum is with Kel Mitchell from Galaxy Quest and Nia Peoples. And
Nia Peoples.
They look all militaristic and rockin' and ready to defeat the invading aliens, and it looks kind of neat. But then again, so does Battle: Los Angeles with Michelle Rodriguez and who's that guy that was in With Julia Roberts, motorcycle guy.
Aaron Eckhart.
Aaron Eckhart, yeah. I think he was in it.
Yeah.
So I think we've got a show.
Excellent.
I think we're good. Don't forget to check us out online. We're at post-movie.net, and we're on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter at twitter.com/SteveHead. And John, you're at DVD a Day.
DVD a Day at Blogspot. I think it's .com.
And one of these days you're going to be on Twitter.
Yes.
I know it.
Well, I work for Boston Event Guide. I do reviews there, and we're about to launch that as a blog too. And so when I have that as a blog, we'll get me on Twitter. We'll do all those other happy things. Make me modern man.
Sweet. And of course, if you have any questions, any opinions, you want to talk about any of the movies, send us an email. We are at postmoviepodcast@gmail.com. So until next week, this is Steve Head.
And this is John Black.